morning, good evening, good afternoon to you, wherever you might be in the world. Welcome to the channel if you are a newbie. If you're returning, welcome back. Thank you to both forms of visitors for being part of my journey. Today, there is not a lot to update, so it should actually be a fairly short video. If you're new to the channel, you will know, or you won't know rather, that I put timing stamps in the description so you can jump to the content of interest for you. For the regulars and for the newbies too, just a word of warning, I've got a graphic slide coming up on the next one talking about shingles, and that is because I have been particularly unwell and suffering from shingles. So just to give you an update on what shingles is, it's if you've had chicken pox as a child, which I did. Sometimes it can recur as an adult. I'm not really sure, I'm no medical expert, but my understanding is it can reoccur as shingles when you're an adult, and this is what's happened to me. So I'll show you what the slide looks like. If you want to jump ahead to the other content, that's fine. I will be looking at explaining a little bit more about the pyramids, how to work out what those peaks mean. And this is basically because the person that asked for the information that I responded to in last week's video has actually come back to me, and they were more interested in this next part that I'll be talking about. But first of all, I'm going to explain shingles so you understand why this week's been pretty uneventful as far as the channel goes and website developments. So let's take a look at shingles if you're ready for it. So it's okay, I'm not going to leave us stuck on this video, okay, because I know it's a bit revolting looking, but bearing in mind this is what this rash looks like, this is what I have had over my face. Ugh, it's just dreadful. So it's okay, I'm not going to leave us stuck on this video, okay, because I know it's a bit revolting. This slide, of course, is much easier on the eye than the other one, but I thought, look, I'm going to mention this because you've got to have a black sense of humour really sometimes to get through this stuff. I'm having a window. I call it, when people ask me how am I going, it's like I have windows of wellness. Other times, like the last 2 days, I've actually been bedridden and running fevers. Besides the pain that you get with the shingles, the thing with my case, what has been learning and where I have a sense of humour is because I got the first sign, the first symptom. I was actually at a lunch with a couple of people and we were discussing the fact there's this massive campaign on within Western Australia, at least at the moment, encouraging people to get shingles vaccines. So there was I being a big mouth saying, oh, look, really, how many people do you know? You know, I'm nearly 60 and in my entire life I've only met 2 people that have got shingles. I'm not really sure we need to be vaccinated. Now, just so you know, I have no firm convictions about the need for a vaccination, even at this point. What I will say is I'm far more aware of why it can be important, because the image that I showed you before was on somebody's back. The problem with it coming up on a face is that, for me at least, and other people may have had the same, it went into my mouth, my bottom lip swelled. It was just massive. I've got it all over my chin, I've got it up my cheek, and I actually have it going into my ear canal. And at one stage we were concerned that it would go into my eye, and also the brain. So this is because, what was I going to say? What I have learned is that shingles can leave people blind and it can actually leave them permanently deaf. So at the moment I've got temporary hearing loss because I've got obviously the shingles in my ear canal and it's still healing. The rest of it that's on my face is finally starting to heal. So I would just say, look, pay real attention to any symptoms. And it started out like I was thinking to myself, have I got cold sores? Because I rarely ever get cold sores. And I thought, this looks a bit like a cold sore because it starts as this red rash. It doesn't have the blistering, but it has a lot of pain associated with it. Anyway, from there, of course, you get all the other symptoms. You've got to get to the doctor really quick, actually. And I was lucky that I did. Because they can treat it with antivirals, but there's only like 72 hours, I think, once the lesions come out anywhere, for those antiviral medications to work. So thankfully I'm on them, but I'm still going through the symptoms, I guess, of the high temperature. The pain is better today, at least for now, Thursday was an okay day for me. I managed to have a pocket, shall we say, a window of health and well-being to be able to record the tarot video. But then I became sick again because after that it was in my ear canal really severely and significantly, shall we say. So anyway, this is why you're not seeing a lot of action on either the channel or the website at the moment. But let's get on with information sharing here as well, seeing as I've got a window. So the first thing I'm going to talk about today, because I can talk about it didn't require a lot of work. I've already done the work. I'm just revisiting past and offering clarification as a response to an inquiry, is I'm going to talk about the pyramids, because the person said to me, look, I kind of understood the previous stuff that I put up last week. They understood that. They were fine with that. What they were struggling with was to interpret the numbers that I've got here in this pyramid as pink. What does that mean when we have a peak number of a pyramid? Well, okay, what it means is we work out the way the number is calculated as we would with your ruling number. If you check out the ruling number videos, then you will see that there is a breakdown. There's a sum of how we find the number 9, because obviously when we add all these numbers up, we reduce it down to a single number. So for me, when I'm talking to people or if I'm doing charts, I just turn around and say, oh, I don't say, oh, that's a 9. I look at it and I go, oh, that's an 18/9, or that's a 27/9, or whatever. That's the way I approach it. So when we look at these vibrations, the best thing to do for now is to look at the ruling number information, because that carries a vibration. But the difference is with the peak pyramids, because it's for a 12-month period, it's called a temporary vibration. So if we were looking at the information on, sorry, I'm having a moment here. I have done a transcript, but if we look at the information I've given you here, where the birth date is the 26th of January 1990, we can see that their ruling number is actually a 2810 or a 28/10, and their peaks are 18/9, 81/9, and then we have a third peak of an 18/9 as well. So there is some variation between the way that we would interpret those number 9s, and it's based on how the number is calculated. Their final peak is the number 2. But where I'm going with this is you interpret it as a temporary vibration. Now, what I have realised too in the process of creating this video this morning is that there is a gap that I have left on the numerology playlist, and that is that I haven't loaded the content on the meaning of the temporary vibration. You know, when it comes up for these peaks, I don't think I have anyway. I'll have to explore it a little bit more closely. But for now, that content that I've already loaded should provide some information to you. So let me give you a bit of a guide of how I would address it if I was you wanting information doing your own pyramids at this time. So what I would do is calculate the numbers, find the numbers of the peaks, and then go and find the ruling number video that I've got on the numerology playlist. So in this instance, we're talking about the number 9. And once you've pulled that video up, you can then go to the specific slides. Once again, everything is time marked in the video, so you don't have to sit through the whole of it. You might want to, I would encourage you to look at the general overview of any number that is showing on your chart anyway, because that's going to give you kind of an overview of the energy and the vibration of the number, and then I would look at the specifics of the number. So based on the birth date of the 26th of January 1990, we've established through that pyramid that the first peak will be in 2016 for them, and the third peak will be in 2034. Now, by visiting that ruling number 9, and we look at what the meaning of an 18/9 is, it's all about prophecy, which is being able to predict, developing their intuition and alignment with the moon. So within this, and this is a very summarized version of it, if the person is able to self-care adequately, make sure they get enough sleep and keep a balance in their life, then they should be able to tap into their intuitive gifts and also to get messages in their dream state. So this is about developing, I guess, their psychic abilities more than anything else, really. Not necessarily, look, I've got to say, not necessarily psychic, because a lot of people think if they're psychic, they've got to be having visions, psychic visions, or development of the clairs. A lot of the time, it's about that inner instinct, that gut knowing, where people can turn around and say something and you just know how it's going to pan out. That's kind of intuitive information. And in fact, that's called claircognizance, clear knowing, I think. For now, my brain's not really working well. So I'm going to do a bit of a disclosure here. When I picked out that birthday number, that was to do this exercise or activity on for the pyramids for last week's video. The first one that just came to mind happened to be my eldest daughter's birthday, so that's actually her birth date. Now, I don't think she is going to be watching this video. I don't think my mother's going to be watching it either, so I've got a certain liberty there and discretion to speak honestly about this. And I thought about this in between recording it. How would my daughter respond? And this is, I'm hedging about coming to a conclusion here, okay? She's in a peak year of 2025. Now, when I go to that ruling number video and I look at what that means, we don't have an 81/9. So we revert back to the full meaning of the 9, okay? Which is that if you look at the video that I've put up for ruling 9s, we're going to be looking and applying the general information of the number 9 to her birth chart, which is one of being a visionary. It's associated with prophecy. There is also the seclusion, which is the hermit, opportunity for reflection, shining light on the past to get understanding, to return to the truth of who and what they are, and also about finding their life purpose and being able to live with a humanitarian consciousness. Now, the reason why I'm bringing my daughter into this is because this is a fairly recent development, but we all have life struggles, and it doesn't matter who you are, what your background is, we do get those curveballs thrown in our path, and my daughter's no different. So because I had challenges with my ex-husband, my children had challenges as well, and as part of their maturing and growing up, there becomes some bitterness there at different times, because they've got to grow and mature and develop. Where I'm going with this is, I had thought that my daughter and I had become, shall we say, estranged. She was not who I'd expressed it to other people. She was not who I thought she was. I no longer understood her. I didn't actually recognize her in her behavior. She was, I would say to people, she was not being the person that I imagined and envisaged her to be when she was a child, because she was actually very blessed with gifts. She's a very psychic medium, was able to see spirit from a very early age, and she just had this real inner wisdom, compassion and love, and a gentleness would be where I would be going with this. And then at a certain point, I'm trying to think, I don't know what year it was, but she became hard. She allowed the harsh experiences to make her harsh and to become a bit bitter. And I know it was probably 12 months ago or 18 months ago, we suffered, I thought, an irreparable rift, and that she'd lost sight of who she was. I actually used those words to somebody. I said, I don't think she knows who she is anymore, and I don't know if she can find her way back. Anyway, I got a phone call from her this year, and in the course of conversation, this is the more recent past, she showed me she's back to who she was. I can see the beauty of her soul again. It was buried for a little while there. And the reason why I feel that I can actually discuss this is because in the course of the conversation that we had over the telephone, because she lives interstate, I actually had said to her, I didn't recognize you anymore. I lost sight of who you were. I said, because you just were so unfamiliar to me. I said, and seeing you sound like you've grown, you've become wise, you've got back to who you are. This is the person that I always thought you were. and I can see you again. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense to people, but yeah, this is why I say, for me, I'm bringing this story through simply because it reinstates or reaffirms what we see associated with this numerology. Return to the truth of who they are. That is what she's done. She was never, ever a bitter, nasty, toxic child. She was an absolutely loving, forgiving, kind, compassionate, and empathetic child. She's gone through the school of hard knocks. She managed to get a little bit bitter and twisted along the way, but now she's managed to release that and get over it and return to who she is. So that is how this particular number would play out for most people, I think. But they have to be open to, they have to be willing to, let's be real. And so then the next peak that we look at, or the next numerological sequence, is actually the 2. So, of course, based on that, I would say go and open up the video ruling number 2, which is her final peak. And when you look at the actual pyramid structure, I feel it makes perfect sense. So this is where it goes into a predictive aspect, right? If a person takes on board the lessons that they get through these peak years, then it's more likely that that final peak will come to fruition. So in this particular instance, we're looking at a peak of number 2, a pure 2, because there's no way to the way this is calculated, it just comes to 2. It's not 9 plus 2 is 11 or anything like that. We've come to a pure 2. Okay, so then I would go to as I said, the number 2 slide and look at what this means. And what it actually means is a person with wise judgment. They've got discernment. They're able to discriminate between what is moral, what isn't moral. They've got the necessary wisdom to be able to apply it in healthy ways and in leadership ways. But the thing with the number 2 is that if we're talking about a permanent vibration, which is the ruling number, that tends to be the power behind the throne. They're quite humble. They actually don't want to be the face of change. They're quite happy to play that support role as a part of change. So what I would interpret is that by the time she gets to a 4th peak, that's a culmination of all the experiences and knowledge that she's gained over the years. I actually believe, this is why I think it's important to recall, my daughter actually could see guides and that kind of thing from a very early age and tap into guidance, but she set it down for whatever her reasons are. And I sort of think by the time she gets through these next peaks, she's going to be embracing her gifts again. And from there, she will be able to be a force for change, shall we say. So with the number 2, as I say, from a ruling number or a permanent vibration, we're looking at somebody with humility that doesn't want to be the face of change, but is happy to play the, say, assistant or whatever. So what I would perceive from this is by the time my daughter gets to being in her 4th peak, she is going to be working actively towards the humanitarian consciousness, which is something that is really important to her. Always was. When she was a child, she wanted to be a lawyer, and she wanted to work to help children and women actually that were suffering from whatever. I'm not even going to go too far down that pathway, but she had this humanitarian consciousness from a long way back. But there's different ways to actually achieve a goal, you know. And so the way I would interpret this is that she will find herself in a position where she's supporting somebody who is charismatic, has the connections or whatever to make positive change, who is willing to listen to her as an advisor within the change making, shall we say. So anyway, that's just how I interpret it. They don't glory seek. So let's set aside all of that for now, though, the numerology. Hopefully that answers and clarifies the questions and supports people to work out what they're trying to do. By the way, I've got all that content. I think I've got that loaded on the website. I can't remember now. Obviously, the memory's failing me a little bit this week. But as far as the web development goes, if you take a look at it and you've been monitoring it, you will see that there's probably been some minor changes that have been done. I'm struggling with memory at the moment because obviously I've been so unwell. Either way, I haven't completed the task that I set myself. The very minimal work or changes have occurred on it. So sorry to have let you down. I know that the work that I did actually achieve was related to the content that we see here on the slide. I'm pretty sure I've started the spiritual hygiene activities. And I know that I created the sacred breathing video. I can't load it onto YouTube. I've put it onto the website, and this is because it's coming up with a copyright breach. Although there is no copyright, I've contacted, because I got the music from Artlist and I'm no longer registered with them. So it's licensed to them, but I've got to take some actions, which obviously I haven't felt well enough to do, with YouTube to get them to recognise that I'm not breaching copyright so that I can publish it. But either way, it's very minimal. What I've done on this particular slide in regard to the website is really quite very limited. As for the chakra content, no, nothing at all. Nothing's happened on that. I haven't got around to it yet because I've been trying to prioritise the spiritual hygiene stuff. So as far as the community gathering goes, that's actually scheduled for this Wednesday. Now, I perceive I'm still planning to go ahead with it, despite the fact that I've got shingles, because I should be past the contagious, well, in fact, I am past the contagious period already. But the other thing is too, that because the event only goes for 2 hours, even if I am still feeling unwell, shall we say, I still feel that I'll be well enough to go and host the gathering, because as I say, it is just for the 2 hours. Now, the other thing to mention is, at this point in time, it looks like I've got a wait list happening. It's absolutely fully booked, which is a bit scary for me, actually, because of me not feeling well. It's like, oh, am I going to be prepared enough? The other thing I was going to say is, as far as my face goes, the blistering has gone, okay? I'm just left with redness at the moment, almost. So I'm not going to worry about putting on makeup. I'm going to go along to that as is, bad luck. You know what I mean? This is simply because the skin is going to be too sensitive, so people be prepared for it. On a humorous note, speaking of that, I took a consignment the other day with a face that was covered in calamine lotion and bits of cotton wool hanging off it. I looked like something that had crawled out of a coffin. My intention had been to hide in the house while the delivery occurred, but the guy struggled with the gate, so I had to go out and open the gate for him. Lucky he's seen me before, but at the same time his jaw did hit the floor and he was like, oh, as you would be. Anyway, suffice to say, I'm still sorting through crystals of what I will take along. I'm not even going to touch the crystals until maybe Tuesday night. I'm isolating myself at the moment until I'm through a lot of the pain, shall we say, the pain and high temperatures. When I feel a bit better, I'll be back out there. Oh, anyway, point being, Tarot Night is still on, and I'll see you down there. You might see me, but you might regret seeing me as well. Well, you will see me. If you go along, you're going to see me. Just be prepared. So as far as the channel update goes, once again, that has fallen by the wayside. Only one video loaded this week, and that was the Tarot for Beginners. And that's because actually that was that window of opportunity that I had on the Thursday. So I've created that new playlist, and this video was on it, and I will add to the playlist as time goes along. But it's mainly directed at those people that attend the community night here, simply because they turn up sometimes with tarot decks that they haven't even opened, which is a little bit of a problem for me on the night. Crystal Magic playlist is going to be fairly brief for this week's yarning, and that's because obviously I haven't really loaded any content, so this is about futuristic. What I can say is that I received a consignment of some spheres. What have I got? I've got Yooperlite spheres. I've got some fireworks spheres. What else did I get? This was when I was looking really special up at the gate. I got some rainbow moonstone, very small towers. And I know that I got a fourth product, but do you think I can think what it is right now? Absolutely not. I can't think. But anyway, there's something else there. And then I might get some Trolleite. This video is still under construction, but it's going to be loaded on Tuesday. I've got a couple of days there to try and work on it. So if I get another couple of windows of wellness, I've just got to get the brain to function properly to analyze and process information that I load up there and try and be able to articulate it effectively. But anyway, yeah, look, Trolleite is scheduled for next week, as is Yooperlite. Now, the thing too is I haven't actually started the content on this one. I'm going to try and stick to the schedule. Okay, that's my commitment to you. I will try and stick to the schedule. Please forgive me if I don't. What I want to speak about now is with the Yooperlite images, because I actually hadn't seen it before. This is one of the reasons why I ordered it. Now, my spheres must be better quality than what we've got in this image here. I do have a bit of a problem. I've got to expose it to UV light to be able to get it to glow like what we see in this image as well, but I want to test it out a little bit, but I've got to try and work out how to do it to see if I can get mine to glow like this. And of course, once I've worked out how to make it all glow, I will be sure to let you know on next week's video or on the Yooperlite video as well. For now though, I'm going to say, look, thank you very much for being part of my journey. Do take care of yourselves. I'm going to disappear now, actually. I'm going to give myself a break again. And I shall catch you on the next video. Bye bye for now.